Hybrid lighting.
Discover Mirrorless recommends the LED hybrid lighting solution from Quantum called the Omicron. It's Crockett here, and I am discovering mirrorless as much as probably you are right now. You think sometimes you get it all figured out and you try something different or try something new and you realize, oh, that's kind of cool, we got to move on, right? One of the things that I'm seeing develop as a photographer that's moving from DSLR to mirrorless is that I'm now thinking that autofocus works with video now, and how am I going to take advantage of that? Now, there are some pretty crazy claims by some camera manufacturers, that they've got autofocus tracking down cold, where you can frame up your shot, tap on the screen or set with the knobs who or what you want to stay constantly in focus on, and then even if that person moves in and out and back and forth, it stays tack sharp. Well, that's not possible. Well, I guess it is possible. It's not happening right now. That doesn't mean that it's all bad and it's all rotten. It's not. In fact, it's all very, very good. And for particularly event photographers like wedding photographers, I mean, you're going to need that autofocus tracking. But on a DSLR, it really doesn't work really well, with the exception, of course, of the upper-end Sony cameras. Now, Sony really does have autofocus figured out when it comes to video. So if you're a hybrid photographer and autofocus is something that you have to have, which most of us who shoot events have to have. If we're studio portrait folks, we can get by with manual focus, right? Well, autofocus is not something that we just tack on as an accessory anymore. It's a vital piece of how we create our images. So if you have to stay with DSLRs as long as you can, you may want to take a look at the Sony equipment, because from what I see at the CES event here this week, that we're seeing the really good results, even though that's a pretty complicated system, the big Sony system. On the more affordable and practical side, the mirrorless cameras of all varieties and brands, including Sony, really do autofocus when it comes to video much, much better. But here's a tip for you. When we want to stay in autofocus, we've got different focus modes that we need to choose from, right? Most folks think we've just got continuous focus and then single focus and then there's flex focus, you know, depending on which brand of camera you have. But you will find out instances like this right here where I'm using face detect mode. And face detect will scan and see eyes, and it measures, you know, there's a triangle shape there with a mouth. It recognizes that's a face and it puts priority of focus on that. So the combination of mirrorless cameras and the best lenses, of course, you can afford, and the face detect mode. Funny things happen in the desert when the sun starts going down. In face detect mode will give you that creative ability that you may be missing with your DSLR, right? There are certain shots, particularly if you're shooting a 70-200 f2.8 lens with your DSLR and you're trying to shoot video with that, there are certain shots you're just not gonna attempt because you know your autofocus is gonna jump all over the place and it will slow you down. When you move over to mirrorless, you will discover that your confidence in autofocus in video goes way up. That opens a lot of doors. Not that I'm trying to push you one way or another, but at some point, customers will expect you to have autofocus when it comes to video, not just, hey, this is really a cool thing that I can do. So even though there's a bunch of people who think I'm nuts by saying the DSLR is dead, which it is, we're going to replace DSLRs with mirrorless cameras. And one of the reasons we want to do it sooner rather than later is that autofocus for video works much better on a mirrorless camera than it does a DSLR. Just give it some thought. Talk to you later.
Hybrid lighting.
Discover Mirrorless recommends the LED hybrid lighting solution from Quantum called the Omicron.